welcome to a Friday edition of Leah hanging out in the back in the studio by herself, with a tiny little bit of direction and some really good ideas, and we're going to do a little tiny bit of serging today. I'm going to show you some of my favorite serger tips today. And Anne had brilliant ideas, but she had other homework, so I get to do the serger demo today, which I'm very excited about. I like serger demos. And the serger's already threaded. So these are a couple of my tips for serging. Maybe not all of them. I have lots more, but this is the relevant ones for today. So we're going to go to that camera. Right now I have this serger set up for a 3-thread narrow serge. This is a Bernina L460. And we're going to do a couple different things as we go. Might need slightly more fabric. So my first tip for your quick serger demo instruction day is anytime you set up to do anything on your serger, test first. That's just a rule. That's not even a serger tip. That's just a good sewing rule. So with a 3-thread serge, if you're serging away and you have tails beginning and end of what you're doing, weird scraps from my peppermint swirl dress that I made. So as you serge, you're able to use that knife to cut off your tails. What do you do with this loose floppy tail? That's always a good question. One of the easiest ways to manage it is to use a snag repair kit or a loop and tail wand. So this is another use for your expert embroidery loop and tail wand from OESD. There's also a clover version, but we're sold out at the moment. I know they'll be coming this way, but they're not here yet. So with this loop and tail wand, carefully sneak it out of its package. It's a tiny little rasp. So it's got a really pointy end that's quite sharp, and a very textured end right there. So what we can do to tidy up these serger threads is we can push that pointy end through our previous serging stitches as far as we want. We don't need to go super far. And then as you get closer to the raspy bit, wrap that tail of serging need a little looser there. Wrap that tail of serging back through. And essentially that's pulled most of our tail through. Could have cut that tail a little shorter. We've pulled that tail back through the end of our stitching. It's all nicely secured. It's not hanging out loose and floppy somewhere else. And then we can trim at that point. Depending on your thread and your fabrics, it might be easier to use a slightly smaller version, and the clover one might be a little bit easier because it is just a little bit thinner of a rasp. So that's one option. We also have a thread pick. So this is a Clover Soft Touch thread pick. Also great for picking up a thread and moving it where you want it. Also top secret packaging. Ooh, the packaging is stapled. Makes it way harder to demo. So same idea. Has a tiny little tiny little crochet hook on there, essentially. So we can go do this the other direction. So on this one, we'd poke it through and hook those stitches. Hopefully hook more than one. And same thing, you'll be able to pull that loop of stitching back through under your previous stitching line. So next serger tip is turning an outside corner, because there's just times in your sewing life where you want to serge around the edge of something square. Dropping down and doing outside corner with a 3-thread serge is easier. So I've just got 2 little pieces of fabric here together. We're going to trim as we go. And then as you get closer to where you're turning, if you cut a notch of fabric, the distance between your needle to the front of your knife, out the width that you're cutting off, you'll be able to turn the corner seamlessly without a weird bunch of fabric. Roughly an inch on this machine. Little notch inward. So as we get to that point, we're going to take 1 stitch off our fabric. Can lift your foot. You're going to pull gently backwards to release the thread from the stitch fingers under your plate. And we're going to line that back up in front of the needle. It's already started cutting. And we've gone around our corner. Let me do that once more. It's the second corner. You could definitely do this step without your fabric on the machine, so you don't forget. So again, 1 step off, drop the needle, release the thread slightly to the back, just line it up right back in front of the needle. So you can get all the way around something. I've got a weird loopy leftover bit there. Let's go stitch one more thing. Let's do a start and a stop. So another way to start and stop and keep your thread tails tidy is as you start, this is tip number 3, starting and stopping neatly. It's a 2-part tip. So we're going to take 1 stitch into our fabric. We're going to lift the foot, and that tail that's coming out the back, we're going to pull it backwards. And then on a Bernina serger, you can pull the stitch finger towards you to help release the stitch. and then put it back. You can bring that tail up and over under your foot and then drop your foot again. This will be how you start. We're going to stitch over those threads. Nice and easy. And then when we come to the end, we're going to take one stitch off our fabric. And again, same thing. We're going to release the stitch finger towards us, lift the foot, gentle tug backwards, and then we're going to flip our whole fabric piece over and put it in front of the needle. So it's a flip like that. And then it's just in front of the needle. We'll put our stitch finger back where it was. And then we're going to stitch forward again. We're now on the what was underneath on the bottom before. And we'll just angle off. And then our first tail at the beginning, all tucked in. Second tail, it's falling off the edge. But if you grab one of the threads from the loopers, a little pair of tweezers so you can see what you're doing and grab the thing you want to grab. You pull one of those looper threads, you can tighten that stitch right down along the edge of your fabric. Super tidy little finish. And that's held tight enough that you can just trim that off. And then you can have nice square corners with nice clean finishes at both ends. Those are my 3 serger tips for today. Do you guys want a bonus 4th one? I think we need a bonus 4th one. Let's do an extra one because I'm having fun searching. Don't tell the people who labeled the video that I'm doing an extra one. So my last tip is how to remove your serger stitching. Process is mostly the same whether you're doing a 3-thread or a 4-thread serge. I'm going to grab a slightly different piece of fabric so that we have a clean edge to start with. This is easier to see with all one color, or with different colors in, but we're going to show you how to tell which is which on a 3-thread stitch and how to remove it. Because we'd like to say that sewing is always perfect, but it's not. Sometimes we have oopsies, and sometimes we need to make adjustments. So on my 3-thread serge, the stitches that will be awful if you try and pick at them are the looper threads. So they're the ones that wrap over the edge of your fabric, front and back. On the back side of your stitch, your looper thread goes up into the loop, down and across, up into the loop, down and across. On the front, your looper threads make little, almost like teardrop shapes. And your needle thread, all it's doing is it's a little Loch Ness monster going up and down, up and down, up and down. So when you go to remove serger stitching, you want to remove your needle threads, not your looper threads. Removing your looper threads will require hours and hours and hours and hours of picking, and you'll hate your life and never want to risk doing anything wrong with a serger again. If you can get in there and pick up your needle thread, it is just a little Loch Ness monster going up and down, and it's hooking over those looper threads front and back. This is a 4-thread serge. You'd start with your right needle thread, which will go down the middle of your stitch. This is a 3 needle. We're just going to take out the needle thread. So once you get a couple stitches picked up, and again, practice this with threads that are all different colors, which is how I recommend you learn to use your serger anyway. And that little needle thread is pretty happy because it's just a Loch Ness monster going up and down. It's not a big scary thing. That's our needle thread out. Sorry, that's our needle thread out. That lovely loose thread there. And looper threads removed. Totally doable, totally easy. No swearing, just a couple moments instead of hours and hours with your seam ripper. So there you have it, my 3 and a bonus serging tips for the day.